projectile piece that's upstairs, which of course you've seen, and which I have the honor of it being in the collection now of the museum. I had this piece, and I said to Michel, you know, what, can we do this one? And he said, well, you'll have to make a drawing for that. I learned to make the drawings of each element in the sculpture that would compose it with its precise measurements and all, so that when he had somebody who was going to work on it, they had an exact plan to follow. And that was the necessary translation between what I was doing and the people who were going to do the work, because I could not afford myself to have my own machine tools. This man also was very kind, because he invited me down to Annecy, and he had a couple of old machine tools that were no longer any use because they were kind of outdated. They were too small, or they weren't automated or something. We were getting into that then. And I made a couple of pieces myself so that I could understand exactly what they could do and could not do. My curiosity is what drives me forward. What is not affected, really, is what emerges. This is not a machine tool. This is the result of using these huge industrial saws. You start out with a block, and you cut and cut so that you can derive that form, which then receives. There's a lot involved too in these pieces of figuring out how they can fit into each other without dislocating, without falling, how the way in which the joints are made prevent any piece from moving. But it becomes, as I say, it becomes a vocabulary. I'll make a comment on this last piece, which is upstairs. This is a curious thing, because the piece in the middle, this element, was one of the things I did down there on those machine tools myself, but I brought it back kind of as a souvenir. I didn't know what to do with it. It's a good example. And then finally, I had the idea of making a piece that could move, change positions. I'll just say that you see this kind of tongue and groove joint here that allows this to be displaced all laterally. Every element can be displaced laterally, so that you can compose and recompose the sculpture a bit as you wish. But the final thought of the sculpture was that I had this, which was cut with a milling machine, and I designed this sort of cloud so that when the milling on this side conforms and goes right into the next throat of the next milling gesture down here, on the other side, they don't fit together. And it's just like in people's lives. They get one thing going and then something else is out of joint. It was kind of the point of the piece. Now this is the S111. The piece is called McGee because I cared about who I gave it to that much. But the original, this was the time when people were interested in multiples. That is to say, pieces of sculpture that can be produced industrially. My idea with this piece was to make 11 elements to it, which can be composed in any way. I tried to do something in which the person who owned the piece buys the pieces and composes it, but I tried to do it in such a way that he could not come up with something that I would not approve of. In other words, it's like making a corral for his thought. Now, this was done in aluminum, but you can see here, here's the groove. It's all tongue and groove fitting. Right here, this is a slanted cut. So that the piece slides in, but it can't fall forward. Anyhow, without getting into all those details, aluminum was the wrong material. Because when you take it apart and put it together many times, the aluminum becomes bruised. It makes like little cowlicks. But now if you have a tiny little file, you can get rid of that and get the piece going, but you cannot sell a sculpture to somebody with a little tiny file and a piece of sandpaper, saying if it ever gets stuck, just use these. And the pieces, the series could have been done in a kind of industrial bronze, which is hard enough, or in stainless steel, but as you can well imagine, my means never allowed me to get that far. But this is one of, there were 11 of them made, and they're in different places in the world. I don't even have one. Anyhow, my work in the machine tool pieces went up to that point. then I got very interested in the idea of multiples. Now that fell through because simply, I remember talking to a dealer I liked very much about the idea of multiples. I finally realized that it's not interested, the art market is not interested in multiples, they're interested in unique things. And they weren't filled with any sort of no idealistic idea about something becoming available to a lot of people, nor using market research techniques for the development of multiples. I understood that, and I'm not a sociologist, so I just dropped the whole thing.